Now let us understand how Shakespearean plays were structured in terms of performance. First, the duration. Most plays lasted around 2 to 3 hours. There was no interval or break in between, so the performance was continuous. Because of this, the storytelling had to be fast-paced to keep the audience engaged throughout. An interesting and lesser-known fact is that the audience could come and go during the performance. Unlike modern theatres, there was no strict rule that required people to stay from beginning to end. This again shows how flexible and informal the theatrical environment was. Now let us move to the doubling of roles, which is a rare but important point. In many cases, the same actor played multiple roles within a single play. This was mainly because acting companies had a limited number of actors. Minor characters were often performed by the same person at different times. This is important because it helps us understand the structure of Shakespeare's plays. Scenes were often arranged in such a way that one actor could manage multiple roles without conflict. Next, we come to the parts system, which is a technical acting detail. Actors did not receive the full script. Instead, they were given individual parts, usually in the form of scrolls. These contained only their own dialogues along with entry and exit cues. This system is closely related to the cue script method but is more technical in execution. So, the key exam keyword here is part-based performance system. Overall, these points show that Shakespearean theatre was highly practical and efficient. It was designed to manage time, limited resources, and continuous audience engagement while still delivering powerful performances. Now let us examine 3 important but often overlooked aspects of Shakespearean theatre. There was no director system, the use of the prompt book, and the flag system. First, the absence of a director. In Shakespeare's time, there was no modern concept of a director as we understand today. There was no single person controlling the entire performance. Instead, control was shared. Senior actors often guided the performance, and sometimes even William Shakespeare himself may have been involved in supervising certain aspects. This means that theatre was actor-centered rather than director-centered. This is an important insight. The success of the performance depended largely on the actor's skills, memory, and coordination rather than on a centralized directing authority. Now let us move to the prompt book, which is a hidden but very important element. The prompt book was the master script kept backstage. It was controlled by a person known as the prompter or bookkeeper. This person played a crucial role in managing the performance. The prompt book contained all the details needed for staging, including cues, sound effects, and timing of entries and exits. It ensured that everything ran smoothly, even though actors themselves only had access to their individual parts. Finally, let us look at the flag system, which is a very tricky but important exam point. A flag was raised on top of the theatre building to signal that a play would be performed that day. This was a simple but effective way of informing the public. More interestingly, the color of the flag indicated the genre of the play. A black flag meant a tragedy, a white flag meant a comedy, and a red flag indicated a history play. So, these 3 elements together show how organized and practical Shakespearean theatre was, even without modern systems. It relied on coordination, signals, and shared responsibility to create successful performances. Now let us understand a very important principle of Shakespearean theatre, the importance of sound over visuals. In Shakespeare's time, there were no modern lighting effects and no microphones. This means actors could not depend on visual technology to create impact. Instead, the entire performance depended mainly on sound, especially the human voice. So, voice became the primary tool of acting. Actors had to speak clearly, loudly, and expressively so that even people standing far away could hear and understand them. Along with voice, rhythm and rhetoric were also very important. The musical quality of language, especially in verse, helped to create emotion, emphasis, and dramatic effect. This leads to a very important exam line. William Shakespeare is a poet of the ear, not the eye. This means his plays are meant to be heard and experienced through sound rather than seen through visual spectacle. Now let us look at applause and payment culture. Audience reaction played a direct role in the success of a play. If the audience liked a performance, they showed appreciation through applause and enthusiasm. Popular plays were repeated more often because they attracted larger audiences. So, theatre during this time was largely market-driven. Success depended on audience response and demand. Finally, let us consider Shakespeare's structural genius. Shakespeare designed his plays by keeping in mind audience reactions, stage limitations, and the availability of actors. He adapted his writing to suit these practical conditions. For example, soliloquies became an important technique. Since there were no close-up shots like in modern cinema, soliloquies allowed the audience to understand a character's inner thoughts directly. So, the key idea is that Shakespeare used sound, language, and structure very intelligently to overcome the limitations of his stage and create powerful dramatic effects. Now let us examine three important aspects: violence on stage, memory-based acting culture, and anti-illusionist elements. First, violence on stage. Unlike classical Greek theatre, where violent actions were usually performed off-stage and only reported to the audience, Shakespearean theatre showed violence directly on stage. This made the performance more dramatic and visually intense. For example, in Macbeth, murders and violent acts are presented as part of the action, increasing emotional impact. So, the key exam contrast is this: Greek theatre presents violence off-stage, while Shakespearean theatre brings it on stage. Next, let us look at memory-based acting culture. Actors in Shakespeare's time depended heavily on memory. They had to learn their lines through repetition and practice. Printed scripts were not widely available, and as we have already seen, actors usually received only their individual parts. Because of this, certain patterns developed in the language. We often find formulaic expressions and repeated structures, which helped actors remember their lines more easily. So, memory was not just a skill, it was a central part of the performance system. Finally, let us understand anti-illusionist elements. Shakespearean theatre did not aim for complete realism. Instead, it often reminded the audience that what they were watching was a play. This connects with the idea of theatrical illusion we discussed earlier. The audience was aware of the performance, yet still emotionally engaged. This balance between awareness and involvement is very important. This concept can be connected to modern theatre theories, especially those of Bertolt Brecht, who later developed similar ideas about distancing the audience. However, Shakespeare used such techniques much earlier in a different form. So, the key idea is that Shakespearean theatre combines realism with awareness, using violence, memory, and performance techniques to create a powerful and engaging experience. Now let us look at special effects in Shakespearean theatre, which are simple but very effective. Even without modern technology, theatres created powerful visual and sensory experiences using practical techniques. First, trapdoors. These were built into the stage and used for sudden appearances and disappearances. They were especially useful for supernatural scenes. For example, in Hamlet, the ghost of Hamlet's father could appear in a dramatic way using such stage mechanisms. Next, thunder effects. Since there were no sound systems, theatres created thunder by rolling cannonballs or heavy objects backstage. This produced a loud rumbling sound, adding intensity to storm scenes and supernatural moments. Then, blood effects. To show violence realistically, actors used animal bladders filled with blood. These would be burst at the right moment to simulate bleeding on stage. An interesting and lesser-known fact is that sometimes real animal blood was used. This made the scenes more shocking and vivid for the audience. So, the key idea is that Shakespearean theatre relied on creativity and practical methods rather than technology. These simple effects, when combined with strong acting and language, created a powerful and memorable experience for the audience. Now let us understand the social and political background that shaped Shakespearean theatre. First, under Elizabeth I during her reign, theatre flourished and became a major cultural activity. Playhouses were built, acting companies grew in popularity, and audiences increased. However, this growth existed alongside strong censorship. Plays had to be approved before performance, and anything politically or religiously sensitive could be removed or altered. So, theatre developed, but under careful control. Next, under James I of England, royal patronage became stronger during this period. Acting companies, including Shakespeare's, received official support, which gave them prestige and protection. At the same time, there was a noticeable shift in themes. Plays began to focus more on darker elements such as ambition, violence, psychological conflict, and tragedy. This reflects the changing mood of the Jacobean period. Finally, let us look at Puritan opposition. The Puritans strongly opposed theatre. They believed it encouraged immorality, idleness, and social disorder. Because of the growing political influence, they pushed for strict action against theatrical activities. This eventually led to a major historical event, the closure of theatres 1642. In 1642, theatres in England were officially shut down, bringing an end to this vibrant theatrical culture for a time. So, the key idea is that Shakespearean theatre was deeply shaped by political power and social attitudes. It flourished under royal support but was ultimately suppressed due to religious and political opposition. Now let us understand the economic foundation of Shakespearean theatre, which is very important for a complete understanding of how it functioned. First, ticket pricing varied. The theatre followed a tiered pricing system. The cheapest tickets were for the groundlings standing in the yard, while higher prices were charged for seats in the galleries and private boxes. This system allowed people from different social classes to attend while also maximizing profit. Next, theatre was a commercial enterprise. Acting companies were not just artistic groups, they operated like business organizations. Their survival depended on attracting large audiences and generating regular income. Popular plays were performed repeatedly because they brought more profit. Another important point is that actors were shareholders. This means that leading members of the company invested money in the theatre and received a share of the profits. Their success depended directly on the success of the performances. A key example is William Shakespeare. He was not only a playwright but also a shareholder in his acting company. Because of this, he earned money both as a writer and as a businessman involved in theatre operations. So, the important insight to remember is this: Shakespeare was not just a writer, he was a businessman. This economic structure explains why plays were designed to appeal to wide audiences, why entertainment value was important, and why theatre remained closely connected to public demand and profit. Now let us focus on some key critical insights that help us understand Shakespearean theatre at a deeper level. These are very useful for analytical and long-answer questions. First, theatre as a mirror of society. The plays of William Shakespeare reflect all sections of society, from kings and nobles to servants and common people. Through these characters, we see social structures, class differences, power struggles, and human conflicts. In this way, theatre becomes a reflection of real life, showing how society functions in both its strengths and weaknesses. Second, the audience as co-creator. In Shakespearean theatre, meaning is not fixed only in the written text. It is shaped during performance through the reaction of the audience. Since the audience was active, responding with laughter, silence, or even disapproval, the impact of a scene could change depending on their response. This means the audience plays an important role in creating the final meaning of the play. Third, the fusion of popular and elite elements. Shakespeare's theatre combines high art with entertainment. It includes deep philosophical ideas, poetic language, and complex themes for educated audiences, while also providing humor, action, and spectacle for common people. So, the key idea is that Shakespearean theatre works on multiple levels at once. It reflects society, involves the audience actively, and successfully blends intellectual depth with mass appeal, making it both meaningful and widely engaging. Now let us clearly compare Shakespearean theatre with modern theatre. This is a very important exam-based concept, especially for short notes and comparison questions. First, audience. In Shakespearean theatre, the audience was noisy and highly interactive. They reacted immediately, cheering, laughing, or even expressing disapproval. In contrast, modern theatre audiences are usually silent and disciplined. They are expected to watch quietly and respond only at appropriate moments. Next, stage. Shakespearean theatre, such as the Globe Theatre, was open air. Performances took place in natural surroundings without a closed environment. On the other hand, modern theatre is typically closed and indoor, with controlled space and atmosphere. Now, lighting. In Shakespeare's time, lighting was natural, depending entirely on daylight. There were no artificial lighting systems. In modern theatre, artificial lighting plays a major role. It is used creatively to set mood, focus attention, and enhance visual effects. Finally, acting style. Shakespearean acting was rhetorical. It focused on powerful speech, clear delivery, and expressive language. Actors projected their voices and emphasized poetic dialogue. In contrast, modern acting is more realistic. It focuses on natural behavior, subtle expressions, and lifelike performance. So, the key idea is that Shakespearean theatre relied on language, voice, and audience interaction, while modern theatre depends more on technology, realism, and controlled presentation. This comparison helps us clearly understand how theatre has evolved over time. Now let us conclude our study of Shakespearean theatre. Shakespearean theatre was not just a place of performance. It was a dynamic social space where art, commerce, politics, and public interaction all came together. It reflected society, responded to political authority, depended on economic success, and encouraged active audience participation. At the center of this vibrant system was William Shakespeare. His greatest strength was his ability to engage every section of society at the same time. He could entertain common audiences with humor and action while also offering deep philosophical ideas for more educated viewers. Because of this unique balance, his plays go beyond their time. They remain meaningful across different cultures and generations. So, the final idea to remember is this: Shakespearean theatre is timeless because it successfully combines artistic brilliance with social awareness and universal appeal. So, as we've seen, Shakespearean theatre was not just about actors performing on a stage, it was a complete cultural experience. It brought together people from all classes, blended entertainment with deep ideas, and turned theatre into a powerful social space. What makes William Shakespeare truly remarkable is his ability to speak to everyone at once. His plays could make the common audience laugh, while at the same time making the elite think deeply about life, power, and human nature. Even today, his works continue to influence literature, theatre, and cinema across the world. That is why Shakespeare is not just a writer of his time, he is a writer for all time. If you found this helpful, make sure to revisit these key concepts, because many of them are directly asked in competitive exams. And that's a wrap on Shakespearean Theatre and Audience.